Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to get into just kind of general full body mobility, starting with our crocodile breaths. I want to get into some neck and hip movement, and then a little bit of like mild core focus. So should be a good class. Let's get started. So we're going to start on our back for our crocodile breathing, making our big C-shaped hands. Remember, index finger on abdominals, side palm pressing into the side body of the low back, and thumbs pressing into the low back erector muscles. Placing the hands beneath the rib cage and above the pelvic bone in that nice meaty space around the abdominal. And we're going to take some nice, deep, diaphragmatic breaths, inhaling into the nose, feeling that expansion into the hands, and full exhale, drawing navel all the way into the spine. And as you exhale, let your hands squeeze in a little bit in order to give you some resistance for your inhale to expand out into. Full exhale, drawing navel all the way into spine. And on that inhale, as you're expanding out, can you expand evenly in all directions like a balloon inflating? Or do you feel that expansion moving more forward through the abdominals? Do you feel it more to one side and not to the other side? And is it difficult to get the back to expand posteriorly? Wherever you're feeling difficulty with that expansion, on that next exhale, let your fingers press into that space just to give yourself a little bit more resistance, and then focus your breath into that area to see if you can get it to move a little bit. On the next exhale, go ahead and let your hands drop down. We're going to take one or two more breaths in without the hands to see if you can feel that expansion without the physical cue of your hands. And then we're going to slowly move into our quadruped position onto hands and knees. Now, as we get to hands and knees, I want to continue to breathe into our crocodile breath. So we're spreading our fingers nice and wide, grounding palms and extending elbows fully without locking. On the inhale, I want to be soft, letting our hips rock back. And on our exhale, we're rocking forward, loading specifically into the wrist space. Going nice and slow to start with. And comparing the right wrist to the left wrist. Noticing if there's any difference tension-wise. Pain, I want to make sure we are avoiding it, not pushing into pain. And we're going to keep our reps kind of light at 5 reps. We're going slow, so we don't have to do a lot. And then we're going to turn our fingers out to the side, continuing to move with our breath. Exhale as you move to one side. Inhale as you come back to center, and exhale as you move to the other side. Moving into each wrist, I also want to feel the shoulder blades active. As I'm moving away from one palm, I'm pushing. And as I'm moving to that palm, I'm pulling. And I want to feel that action at the shoulder blade, feeling the scapula slide and glide along the rib cage. But also being very active to the rib cage. And then we're going to turn our fingers all the way back towards the knees. Closer the hands are, the less intense this is. The further out we come, the more intense. I don't want this to be super intense. I want it to feel good and juicy. And from here, inhale going forward, exhale softly rocking back. We're continuing to inflate into our crocodile breath, and exhale, drawing navel into spine. Again, 5 nice, slow reps. Then we're going to flip the palms to the back side. Since this position can be a little uncomfortable, we're starting with the elbows bent. Inhale as we're soft with soft elbows. Exhale as we press lightly, extending the elbows. Can you feel a stretch at the elbows? If so, that's what I want to move into, is lightly move into that stretch, seeing if we can get a little bit more extension with each one, but I don't want to force it. If you're able to get to full extension without locking and without stretch at the elbows, then we can start to rock back a little bit, hips to heels. Continuing to inhale as we come forward, exhale as we sink back. Inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale, drawing navel into spine. We'll come off our wrists, roll them out a little bit just to get some flow. And then we're going to come back and get into our feet, into our toes specifically. Turning the heels in as far as you can and tucking the big toe so that it is lightly loaded. From here, we're inhaling forward into our crocodile breath. Exhale as you sink your hips into your heels. And inhale coming forward. Something I want to play with today on this is as you sink back, I don't want the pelvis to scoop to where we get a rounded lower back. So I kind of want to exaggerate a little bit of anterior tilt to the pelvis. So we got a little opening up through the belly and maintaining that as we sink back. And notice if that makes a difference in how this mobilizes the big toe joint. Again, with each one, we're sinking a little more deeply into that big toe to get some stretch into the arch of the foot, but without being forceful. And then we're going to turn our heels out and getting tucked all the way out to the pinky toe. If you can. Not everybody can get that pinky toe tucked in. At least not at first. It may take a while to develop better mobility to get that pinky toe. And from here, doing the exact same thing. Exhale as you sink hips to heels. And inhale forward into our crocodile breath. Notice where you feel the tension on this movement. Do you feel it more on the right side than you do on the left side, especially to the lateral arch? Also, do you feel tension in the knees? Is one knee a little stiffer or achy, or just have less range of motion than the other? Then we're going to let our ankles go nice and flat. And we're going to do the same rocking back hips to heels. Now we're feeling into that front of the ankle space and feeling into the knees. If one knee feels stiffer, if it's hard to get a hip all the way down to the heel because that knee won't let you go, that's going to be a signal that you may have some inflammation in that knee. And if you have some tension on one ankle more so than the other, that's going to be an indication of some imbalance in gait mechanics. So we want to play in this area a little bit. As you're sinking back hips to heels, if you're able to load hips onto the heels, you can come all the way back into a tall kneel or a deep kneel, and then move right back forward into your hands. Again, continuing to connect with breath, going slow. And after 5 of these, we're going to go ahead and stand up and grab our staff to do some shoulder mobility. So grabbing staff, we're going to start with about a shoulder width grip. I want a nice solid grip. This is where I want to imagine we're bending the staff. And I want that bend not to just come from the hands and the wrists. I want to feel the elbows spiral. So elbow pits should be facing up towards the ceiling and feeling the shoulder blades packing down and back along the rib cage. I want to be active in that bending of the staff throughout the movement. I also want to try to keep the elbows actively extended throughout the movement. So I don't want elbows to start softening and bending. From here, getting a light scoop of the pelvis. So tucking the pelvis so that we feel that core engagement, drawing our rib down. And I want to maintain that through our core as we slowly bring elbows up towards the ears and squeeze at that end range. I want to squeeze here without letting my back or my ribs extend out. I don't want this rib to flare. So I got to keep that scoop, keep the core engaged as we squeeze back. Inhale, softening forward. Exhale, squeeze. And on our inhale, we're continuing to breathe into our crocodile breath. It's going to be a little more challenging doing it in a standing position compared to supine, as well as having our hands overhead. So I want to continue to feel that crocodile breath. Can we continue to get that expansion in that balloon or 360? Squeeze back on that exhale. Soften forward on the inhale. See if you can squeeze a little further on each one. On the last one, we're going to squeeze back and we're going to hold it in that squeeze as we now go to elevating the shoulder blades, reaching the shoulders up towards the ceiling and then drawing the shoulder blades down the rib cage. I want to keep the elbows actively straight here, and we're continuing to bend the staff. So we're very active through elbows and wrists and trying to get that shoulder blade to slide up and down. As you pull the shoulder blades down, try not to allow your elbows to soften and bend. You may notice that one elbow is really hard to keep extended. That's going to be an indication of some shoulder instability. So we're trying to keep that elbow actively straight and isolate that scapula sliding up and down. On the next one, as you reach up, we're going to keep it up. Keep the shoulders up on your earlobes as much as you can. And then from here, we're coming back to reaching back. This should give you a little bit more range of motion of pulling the elbows back towards the ears. I want to continue to have that scoop in the pelvis, core engaged so we're not getting the rib flare. Also watch out for the head wanting to push forward. I want to stay nice and tall in the spine. We'll slowly bring the hands down, move the staff to behind the back, grabbing palms facing backwards, actively extending and spiraling those elbow pits forward. We're bending the staff, but we're bending it away from the body. Like I'm trying to break the staff towards the wall behind. With that spiraling of the elbows, you should notice that the chest kind of opens up. Shoulder blades pack down and back. From here, we're inhale as we're down, exhale as you lift the elbows up towards the ceiling. Inhale, soften, exhale, lift and squeeze. See if you can squeeze a little higher on each one. Once you get 3 to 5 reps, we can start to bend the hips a little bit. I'm less concerned of maintaining that rib now. We can start to really open up and reach the chest forward as we're lifting the elbows up. Getting that nice squeeze at the very top. And then we're going to flip our palms opposite direction and we're going to do the exact same thing. We'll start in our upright with the pelvis tilted. Still bending the staff away from the body actively. Inhale at the bottom, exhale as we lift and squeeze. The hand position may elicit different stretch of the shoulders. When the hands are facing forward, you may get more stretch in the front of the shoulder or in the bicep. If you're noticing it's tighter on one side compared to the other, number one, I would guess that that's probably going to be on the side that you were having trouble keeping that elbow straight earlier in the staff mobility. And that's going to be related to some shoulder instability as well. So I want to take note of that particular type of tension, especially at the top of the bicep, where the bicep tendon goes over the top of the shoulder. And after we get 5 of those, we'll go ahead and set the staff to the side, and we're going to come all the way back down to the floor, getting into an inverted position, hands grounding around the hips. If you find that arm length is shorter than torso length, it's okay to kind of softly come back a little bit, but I want to have those hands as close to the hips as possible. I want to stay as close to upright as we can. And we're going to come, first thing is just coming back to our crocodile breath. From this position, I'm grounded through my palms, so I'm actively pressing down into the floor. Nice inhale to inflate that balloon. Exhale, drawing navel into your spine. Get a couple of nice deep breaths. And then we're going to start to play with some thoracic cat-cow or inverted cat-cow. So as you inhale, that belly's opening up, your chest is kind of lightly lifting. Spiral your elbow pits out and feel that spread the chest open and lift the sternum up to the ceiling. And on the exhale, drawing navel into spine, allow the elbow pits to spiral inward, and for your shoulders to soften and round up towards your ears. And then inhale, spiraling out, pressing down, getting tall. Exhale, draw that navel in, round forward, elbows rotating inward. We can also add a little bit of movement from the pelvis. As you're inhaling, spiraling out, the pelvis is tilting forward. As you exhale, drawing navel into spine, your pelvis is scooping, so you can start to get some length and stretch down into the lower back. See if you can feel like a nice big stretch across the back, between the shoulder blades, all the way down to the low back. And then as we spiral out and get tall, can you feel a nice big stretch across the top of the chest? With each one, we're slowly squeezing a little further into the end range, whether it's our scoop and our round. Can you get even further into it with that exhale? And as you inhale, can you spiral a little further? Can you lift the sternum a little higher and open the chest and get tall in the spine? And on the next one, as you spiral out and get nice and tall, we're going to stay tall. Now I'm crossing my legs. If you're able to stay grounded, you can change your leg position. Leg position for this part is less important, but I want to make sure that we're solidly grounded through the shoulders. Elbows are spiraled out, chest is open and tall through the spine so that we can get into some neck mobility. So first thing is we're going to start by checking our blind spots. And I want to move from my chin. I don't want to move from the forehead. So moving from the forehead tends to cause a tilt with our rotation, and I want to keep the head on a swivel. So I want to move from the chin. As I get to my blind spot, I am still trying to move my chin as far over my shoulder as I can. We're going to inhale as we come to center, go to the other side. Exhale as we squeeze, trying to move that chin over the line of the shoulder. I want to stay soft here so that we're not moving into pain. And if there's not pain, then I want to slowly squeeze and see if we can get a little bit more range on each one without being forceful. As we're inhaling, coming to the center, we're still filling up our crocodile breath. Fill up that balloon through the core, and then exhale, drawing the navel into the spine as you spiral and rotate. Then we'll come back to center. And now we're going to get into our windshield wipers. I want to very lightly allow the ear to drop to the shoulder. I don't want to try to touch my shoulder. I'm not trying to go to an extreme depth. This is just a light drop to feel a little bit of tension through the side, opposite side of the neck. Inhale to center, exhale as we lightly drop to the other side. Notice the difference of how this feels on the right side compared to the left side. Is one side tighter and more tense? If so, then this is a movement that I would probably want to encourage a little bit more throughout the day. This is getting into scalenes, which can create all kinds of issues through the neck, through the spine, through the upper back. As we're softening into it, I want to start to add my right ear is dropping. My left ear, I want to imagine I got a piece of string lifting that ear up to the ceiling in order to create a little bit more traction. So as I'm lifting, I'm also pressing through the palms. I want to stay very actively pressed down as I lift. Inhale as the head comes to center, to the other side. Exhale as you lift. This is a great movement to also incorporate a little bit of jaw mobility in. So as you're lifting, open up your jaw as big as you can. Try it on both sides. You may feel a greater stretch in the neck. You may feel some stretch within the jaw. Is the right side of the jaw tighter than the left side of the jaw? That can be very important information as well. There's a lot of compensation strategies that go through just our gritting of our teeth, our clenching of teeth. Next, we're going to get into glide. So I want to try to keep our cheekbones on an even plane. Coming back to like moving from the chin, I want to move here and not move from the forehead, because if I move from the forehead, I'm more likely to tilt and rotate into it. So I kind of want to move from the lower part of my neck, and I want to keep the movement as small as I need to in order to do it well. This is a movement that helps to do in front of a mirror. This is also getting into those scalenes. So this is a very, very beneficial movement, especially if you have any kind of shoulder, elbow, wrist, hand issues, pain or motor control related. Again, inhale as you come to center, exhale as you squeeze to the side. And this is a good one to add in that jaw mobility component. As you get to end range, you can play with opening. You can even add little deviations, moving the jaw side to side, noticing if that elicits a little bit different information from that stretch. Now we're going to come in, change positions, and we're going to get into a half kneeling. Now, if balance is an issue, it's okay to use a staff just to have a little bit of support, because a lot of what we're going to be working here is primarily mobility. If you can do this without a staff, great, because then we can add in a layer of stability work, but it's not required. And we're going to start with a little bit of foot mobility first. So I got my right foot forward. I want to lightly lift the heel off the ground. Kind of high enough that you can slide a piece of paper or just your fingers, but not so high that you can put a block under there. I want it to be maybe an inch off the ground at most. And we're gonna ground through the ball of the foot from big toe all the way to pinky toe. So see if you can spread your toes and spread the knuckles of your foot as wide as you can, and then ground into it. We're gonna move our knee back and forth. And if your foot's not grounded, if you move your knee to the inside, it's going to lift your pinky toe off the floor. If you move it out, it's going to lift your big toe off the floor. I want to stay grounded with the ball of the foot. So as I turn in, I want to maintain my pressure through the ball of the pinky toe. And as I return out, I want to maintain pressure through the ball of the big toe. And I want to notice how hard it is it to maintain that pressure throughout the ball of the foot. If you notice the direction your knee goes and you look at your heel turns out as your knee turns in, and as your knee goes out, your heel turns in. So what's happening is we're literally like wringing out the long aspect of the foot through all this midfoot area. So we're getting some nice gentle mobility work, kind of getting those joints coated in synovial fluid, like spraying WD-40 in and just making sure that they know how to move well. If you feel some stretch, you can squeeze into that stretch. We can even add a little bit of load by allowing our body weight to shift onto the foot more, and see if that changes how difficult it is to maintain your grounding. Is it harder to stay grounded through the pinky toe, or is it harder to stay grounded through the big toe? And this will be important information as we switch to the other side to be able to compare, because one foot's probably going to be a little bit different than the other foot. So lightly lifting the heel off the ground, spreading the knuckles and the toes of the foot wide, grounding throughout the big toe all the way to the ball of the pinky toe, and then starting to move that knee back and forth. Do you notice if it's tighter or more mobile through that midfoot area? Is it harder to stay grounded through the big toe or the pinky toe on this leg compared to the other leg? This is really important information. It's going to be, this is going to be something that's going to be showing up in our gait, because our feet need to be able to adjust based on elevation, whether you're walking on uneven terrain, the direction your knee might be in any particular step. If you're feeling difficulty maintaining grounding through one part of your foot based on your knee position, that's going to be something showing up in gait mechanics. There's going to be some instability somewhere along the way. Again, as we're going, we can allow our weight to shift forward so they got more load through the foot as we continue to wag back and forth. Does that change how easy it is to remain grounded throughout the ball of the foot? My right foot feels much more difficult to stay grounded. I got some swelling issues in my right knee based on 5 knee surgeries, and that swelling moves down into the ankle, into the foot. So I have swelling in my foot from my knee, and that changes the way my foot functions. So a lot of this work is to help get the fluid to flow out so I can get the swelling to go down, but also continuing to challenge motor control so that I have good function. We're going to go ahead and switch back to the other side. Now I want to make sure that back big toe is tucked and loaded as if we're going to drive off that foot into a standing position. We're not actually going to drive, but I want to be tucked as if we are. We're going to get some mobility at the big toe as we work our anterior pelvis. On the inhale, we're filling up our crocodile breath, but we're allowing the pelvis to tilt, so that breath is going to move more forward as we get a big sway in our back. And then as we exhale, drawing navel up and into the spine as we scoop and feel that load at the big toe as well as the front of the hip. Light little stretch. Inhale, letting it go forward. Exhale, drawing it in, loading into that stretch. Notice how big of a stretch this is at the front. How far are you able to get that scoop? Can you feel your glute start to contract at the end of that scoop? And do you feel that stretch at the big toe as well? And then we're going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So again, make sure that big toe is low, tucked and loaded. Inhale into that crocodile breath, but pelvis is going forward, and then exhale, drawing navel in as we scoop. Feel the load through the big toe and the stretch through the front of the hip. Nice big inflation on the inhale, exhale, full exhale as you draw that navel in. Feel that nice stretch through the front of the hip. How does it feel on this side compared to the other side? Are you getting as far in the range of motion? Does it feel tighter? If you're getting full range, can you feel that glute kind of starting to contract? Interestingly for me, this hip is tighter. It's mild, it's super mild, but I can feel just a little bit more effort that it takes to get my glute to engage. Then we're going to switch back to the other side. And we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to apply a lunge. So as we scoop, drawing the navel in, now we're going to glide forward, but I want to resist at the hip. I'm continuing to be actively moving into the scoop, even though as I start to glide forward, it's going to slowly pull out of that scoop. So I want to hold that tension as much as I can. Then bringing it back, re-engage the scoop. Exhale as you glide forward. Now notice the position of my head, shoulders, and hips. As I glide forward, I don't want my head to move forward from my hips. I want everything moving in one unit. So if I use my staff to kind of keep me in line as I scoop, my head, shoulders, and hips stay on the same plane, even though my pelvis is getting tilted back. And then we'll switch and do the same thing on the other side. That nice tuck, find that scoop, and then glide forward, drawing that stretch out through the front of the hip. This is another good one to kind of notice the difference on the right side to the left side. Does it give you greater tension? Is it harder to move forward on one side? This left hip feels significantly less mobile. I get a much bigger sensation of stretch, especially as I glide forward. Continuing to breathe into our crocodile breath on the inhale, exhale, drawing navel into spine as you glide forward. That exhale is going to add a layer of stretch to the front of the hip. So I want to keep that breath work moving with. Then we're going to go ahead and switch back to the other side again. And now we're going to add our side body reach. So I'm breathing into the crocodile. On the exhale, we're scooping. The knee that is down, that hand is going to be reaching up as high as you can to the ceiling. As I'm doing this, I want to continue to actively scoop as I reach. And you should feel that stretch through the front of the hip get drawn up into the abdominals as you reach. Inhale, letting it soften, filling up your crocodile breath. Exhale, navel is drawn in as you scoop and as you reach. What I want to watch out for on this is as you reach, I don't want my opposite shoulder dropping down. I don't want a side bend. I want to get long on this side without getting short on the other side. And then we'll switch. Same thing on the other side. Nice locked in big toe, finding that scoop on the exhale, and then adding in that nice big reach. Again, left hip for me, much more restricted. This one's a big one. I can feel all the way up. This is just generally tighter. Although as I'm moving into it, I'm getting a little bit more range on each one. Again, breathing into the crocodile breath, exhale, draw navel in as you scoop and as you reach, all at the same time. It can sometimes be difficult to get all of those cues to move together. So that's part of the reason we want to go slow. And then we're going to switch back to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and grab the staff for this one. Now again, if you need the staff for balance, I would put this to the outside hand so that we can turn towards that side. I'm actually going to use the staff to help keep my shoulders square. So I'm placing the staff across the tops of the shoulders. I want it touching in the exact same place on both shoulders, or it can touch across both clavicle. But I want to make sure it's evenly touching. I don't want it to move off of a shoulder, because then you're not going to be able to keep your shoulders, tell if you're keeping your shoulders square. Coming right back to our same scoop of the pelvis, big toe is still tucked underneath behind us. As we inhale, exhale, scoop, and then we're rotating towards the leg that is in front. And I'm trying to get both shoulders to turn as much as I can towards the wall at my side. I don't want one shoulder to reach. I want to keep it nice and square so that I am swiveling through the spine. Inhale as we come back to center. Exhale, scoop, drawing navel in on that exhale as you rotate. This one, you should still feel that stretch through the front of the hip and the big toe. And as you rotate, it's pulling that stretch more at a diagonal through the obliques. Notice the core engagement, especially as you get into that squeeze. Seeing if you can go a little bit further on each one. And then we're going to switch to the other side and doing the same thing. Big toes loaded. Inhale into the abdominal, into the crocodile breath. Exhale, scoop as you draw that navel in and rotate towards the wall. Again, making sure that that staff is touching both points of the shoulder. That's helping to keep the shoulder square so that you're turning your entire chest evenly and rotating through the spine and not moving at the shoulders. Notice the difference on this side compared to the other side. Do you have bigger stretch or lesser stretch through the front of the hip? Can you go further, or does it feel more restricted? Or do you feel a different level of core engagement as you get to the side? And we'll go ahead and set the staff off to the side. And now we're going to get into a tall kneel position. So I want both toes tucked. We're all the way tall kneel. And we're going to play with pelvic tilt with our crocodile breath. So as we inhale, we're allowing the pelvis to tilt forward, getting this sway in the back. Again, this is going to draw the breath a little bit more forward. I still want to breathe into the back, but it's going to be more restricted because the back is closing. It's getting shorter as the front is opening. Breath is just naturally going forward. As we exhale, drawing navel into spine, we're scooping the pelvis to feel length through the front of the hip. You may not feel stretch just yet, but we want to get length. As you inhale, really try to tilt the pelvis back. You're trying to get your tailbone to reach out as much as possible. I don't want to avoid any kind of pinch or pain in the back, but I want to get as much pelvic mobility in both directions as possible. On the next one, as you inhale, we're going to continue to scoop forward so it starts to draw our hip back like we're reaching that tailbone back towards the heels. See if you can get all the way down to the heels. Make sure that this is not painful on the knees. As low as you're able to go without pain. At the bottom, we're now going to exhale, drawing navel in as we scoop. And we're going to continue to scoop, lifting up from the tailbone as it pulls us back up to tall. And then inhaling into the abdominals as we scoop forward, reaching back through the hips. Exhale, bringing us right back up. Notice this movement generated at the pelvis is creating kind of a wave up the spine. I want to allow that wave to move. Notice if there's any areas of restriction in the low back or the upper back. And on the next one, as you're coming up, I want to scoop, 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 scoop up to the top. And I want to maintain that scoop. If you're in a deep scoop, you should notice your glutes are a little tight and contracted. From here, we're going to do what I call a tall kneel lean back. I'm active through my core, and I'm simply going to lean back lightly, only going back as far as I can control, coming right back forward. Getting a nice length and load through the front of the quads, keeping that core engaged. I want to keep that scoop. Exhaling as I go back, inhaling as I come forward. With each one, I'm seeing if I can squeeze into it a little bit further to go a little further back, but I want to make sure that I'm staying within my sense of control. I don't want to go so far that I can't get back up. Then we're going to come all the way down into our shin box. If you've noticed that one hip is tighter than the other, whichever hip that is, I want to start with that hip in the back of the shin box. So my left hip is my tight side. It's behind me right now. My right knee is the one that is forward. We're going to start with our anterior hip. Knee inside of the knee, where the knee is touching the floor, is our pivot point. I want to push into that knee, allowing the hip to come up off the floor high as we reach that hip bone forward. Again, feeling into any kind of length through the front of the hip. Opposite hand is down, grounded, elbow is spiraled, chest is open. All we're doing is getting this mobility right here. Reaching that hip bone forward on the exhale as you draw navel in. Softening on the inhale as we fill up our crocodile breath. Once you've done 5, we'll go ahead and shin box through to the other side. And we're going to do the same thing. Palm down, spiraled elbow, open chest. Pivoting off the inside of that knee. Pushing to allow the hip to lift and roll forward. Seeing if you can feel that stretch through the front of the hip. And again, stretch is may not be what you feel. This may be just length. It's going to be dependent on how mobile that hip is. The tighter the hip, more than likely the greater the stretch as you get it to open up. If you find that you can't get completely straight with the hip and you're not getting a stretch, then this is a movement that I would recommend working on until there's a lack of neurology there that you don't sense and feel where your end range should be. We want to start to encourage greater movement into the front of that hip. Again, inhale into the crocodile breath. Exhale as you scoop into it. And then we're going to shin box through to the other side. And now I want to get into our pigeon work, but I want to add in this back hip a little bit. So I want to continue to reach that hip forward as we drop into our fold, into our pigeon, modified pigeon. I want to keep the shoulders as square to the floor here as possible. So putting hands on both sides of the knee, rotating in order to feel your sternum square to the floor. Again, that back hip is reaching forward, so you should feel some tension stretch through the front of that back hip. Exhale as you let your hands slide forward, keeping that chest square. Once you get to the bottom, we'll take one more breath in. Exhale all the way as you reach a little further without forcing it. And then on the next inhale, we're going to bring it up and go all the way across. Do the same thing on the other side. So starting with moving that hip forward, pivoting through the knee, hands come to the opposite knee to square the chest. Oh, and this is tight on my low back. I can feel it on this side. Exhale as you reach forward, keeping the chest as square to the floor as possible. Once you're at the bottom, taking another inhale, exhale, reach a little further. And then on the next inhale, we're going to go back across to the other side. We'll go back and forth on this a few times. Again, before you fold, actively reach that hip bone forward as you fold. On the inhale, we're bringing it all the way up and across to the other side. I'm still breathing into the crocodile breath. Coming to the center, we're inhaling. Exhale as you fold. Inhale as you come to center and shift to the other side. And exhale as you fold. Start to notice, how does this feel through the glutes on the right side compared to the left side? How does it feel through the front of that back hip? By keeping that hip moving forward as we fold, you should be able to get stretch on both the glute and that hip, front of that hip. And now I want to start to add in our opening up of the hips a little bit more, like letting the knees splay, changing our position. I'm no longer worried about the knee, using that knee as an arrow. We can now start to explore greater range. If you think about sitting on the face of a clock, you can move in all kinds of directions as long as it is not painful. Kind of be in a state of explore. Whatever you explore on the right side, make sure you explore it on the left side as well. I want to keep each reach with an exhale. Inhale as we're coming back as we explore both sides. We'll get a good 3 to 5 times back and forth, continuing to kind of open up that back leg and comparing left side to right side. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of it, both sides are feeling more similar than dissimilar. As we come back to the starting side shin box, now we're going to work shin box up to knees. My knees are a little sensitive today, so I want to start with using my hands to guide me through to make sure it's not painful. My outside hand is behind my knee, my front hand is in front, and I'm just pushing and pulling my body up so that I don't have to use my legs as much. As I get to the top, we can scoop the pelvis to get a little bit of stretch through the front, and then using the hands to guide the hips back down to the floor. Coming across, doing the same thing on the other side. If the knees feel sensitive or a little uncomfortable to do this without your hands, it's okay to continue to use your hands. This is a great mobility to move through with hands and without, as long as it's not painful on the knees. If your knees feel good and not painful, then we can take the hands off the floor. I want to make sure we're driving through both knees evenly into the floor in order to pick up the hips. But then on the way down, I don't want to just drop straight down. I want to see how far can I reach my hips backwards before my hips touch the ground. And I want them to kiss. And then I'm going to immediately pop right back up. And we're going to do 3 to 5 reps. With each one, can you slide the hips a little bit further back? Can you feel that stretch specifically through that glute? Inhale as you come up tall. Exhale, drawing that navel in as you reach. On the 5th one, we'll bring it all the way across, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Driving through both knees evenly, get that little scoop at the top to get that extra stretch, and then reaching back as far as you can before your hip touches. As soon as it touches, we're driving through the knees to pop right back up and seeing if you can reach a little bit further back on the next one. Inhale at the top, exhale as you reach. This is a good one. The slower you go before your hip kisses the ground, the better you're going to get with the motor control part. This is getting into some core work. So once we get to 5 on both sides, now we're going to come down to our belly, and we're going to do our elbow push-ups. So elbow push-ups, I'm going to start with a full push-up or full plank elbow push-up, and then I'll show a modified version if this is too hard. So I want to start with my palms down and my hands out, so that my chest is completely on the ground. And without lifting the chest, we're going to spiral the palms upwards as we pull the elbows in, so that your inside of your elbow is touching the outside of your rib cage. I want to make sure we have contact with that medial elbow bone. Palms should be facing up. From here, tuck your toes as tight as you can and actively lift the knees up to the ceiling so that you feel your glutes tighten up and contract. We got to maintain that. We're also going to add a little bit of scoop in the pelvis, especially as we press through the floor. So we're going to start with a little crocodile breath at the bottom. That'll kind of draw the pelvis a little bit anterior, and as you exhale, drawing navel into spine, scooping the pelvis, we're going to spiral the palms down as we press through the elbows, lifting the body off the floor. And then as we inhale, we're going to spiral the palms up as we pull our body down to the floor. I want chest and hips lifting and lowering evenly. So I don't want chest to come up first and then hips. And I don't want hips to come up first and then chest. So we're seeing if it all comes down as one even lever. If it's too hard to do this through a full plank, then we can bend the knees, lifting the feet up to the ceiling. I want to continue to scoop that pelvis and feel the glutes contracted. Everything else is the same. Spiral down, press, spiral up, pull. Elbows should come into that side of the rib cage on each one. Exhale as you press. Inhale as you pull. And once you've done 5 to 10 reps, we're going to come all the way back to our back. We're going to make our big C-shaped hands, placing them below the rib cage and above the hip bone. Go ahead and let your eyes close, and we're going to take a minute or two just to get in some nice full breaths. Filling up, feel that expansion of the abdominals, pushing out on all 6 points of contact of the hand, index finger, side of the palm, and thumb. Full exhale, squeeze the hands in to create a little bit more resistance for your next inhale. Notice if it's a little easier or even a little more challenging to get a full, even breath. Is there one area of your balloon where that breath that is not moving or expanding as well as the others? And if you're feeling that, on your next exhale, add a little bit more pressure or resistance with your hand into that space, and on your next breath, intentionally breathe into that pressure. See if you can get it to expand just a little bit more. And go ahead and let your hands drop to the side. Start to relax the shoulders. Continue to breathe into that crocodile breath. But you can also start to allow that breath up into the ribs, into the shoulders and the neck, and even down into the bowl of the pelvis. Kind of breathing out through the abdominals, but also long through the spine. Any tension you're feeling in the ribs or in the shoulders and neck, on your inhale, breathe into that tension, and on the exhale, allow that tension to melt off the body with your exhale into the floor, just kind of letting it melt away. On the next inhale, breathe into any more tension, and then on the exhale, continue to let it melt. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes.